Enaa, in with you in the fight back. Today I'm reviewing Michael Yates's In and Out of the Working Class, and I just want to preface this video by saying thank you to Michael Yates for a complimentary copy of your book. It really was good, and because I had too much time on my hands, I was able to read it in a single afternoon, which bodes well. Anyway, In and Out of the Working Class is a part memoir, part fictionalized version of Michael Yates's life. Who comes from Pennsylvania, grew up in one of the old company towns, and this book is largely a saying about the shapings of class on Yates, and it could be extended to really any one of us. But I think the main purpose of this book is really to tell the story of Michael Yates as an organic intellectual. This is a term of Antonio Gramsci, which is thinkers, intellectuals who grow and learn in the midst of the working class. They grow out of the proletariat itself, and they use that knowledge not to serve, traditional classes, whether the bourgeoisie or the aristocracy, but rather to help the working class in its struggle for self-emancipation. And that strikes me as the major purpose behind Michael Yates's book, because we really have a lot in this book. We have his family, we have the influences of racism, often pervasive. The fact that Yates was using epithets. He encountered people who used epithets, starring in minstrel shows, and showing how racism is really ingrained into the working class through the exploitative system we live in. We also have the nature of work and the economy. And those of you who have seen my review on Naming the System know that I believe Michael Yates has a firm grasp on how the economy works and how working pretty much sucks for everybody. We also have stories of sexism. Sometimes just in the dialogue you can see how pervasive it is, how it's taken as second nature. And one chapter I really enjoyed in this, and I have to admit I really wasn't overly familiar with this, is pretty much the authoritarian and the paranoid personality of Cesar Chavez, the late leader of the United Farm Workers. And Yates had done some work for him and as an advisor, and you could just see almost the cult of personality surrounding Cesar Chavez and how any dissent was kind of silenced. But we pretty much see that capitalist domination through this book is a reality. And Yates had been trained as an economist, in the neoclassical school that we're all unfortunately have to suffer with when we take economics classes. And Yates, who's familiar with this from the inside, the belly of the beast, so to speak, believes neoclassical economics, the Milton Friedmans of the world, may he rot in hell, justifies the rule of the profit system. It's really not connected to real life. And we get some great stories of Michael Yates as a teacher dealing with the problems of the university system. And those of you who think the universities are a hotbed of radicalism either didn't go to the school I went to, or you didn't go to the school Michael Yates went to, because we really don't get that. We really get some of the same exploitive relationships that exist in many other workplaces. Perhaps not as brutal, but certainly quite exploitive. And Yates really paints a picture of his own development, his own intellectual development, and I love intellectual histories of any type, especially when they tend to approach my positions. And he says that capitalism, through its very mode of operation, generates anger and embryonic class consciousness in the working class and other oppressed. And this, the workers are exploited. Those of you who have worked, it's terrible. The jobs are meaningless, and you pretty much do it for a wage. You're really not doing it for any form of self-fulfillment for the most part. And there's really a denial of dignity on the job. I can speak to this having been a worker and a manager to my detriment. At the same time, we have, even though this embryonic class consciousness that Yates explains is because growing up in a company town, there were strikes, there were unions, and all this. It's derailed. We have the psychological warfare of the capitalist class, and Yates explains a lot of this in a chapter called "Removing the Veil," which is almost the culmination of the work, showing the point of enlightenment. And resistors to capitalism are, they're called Reds, they're criminals, they're insane. Watch the Glenn Beck program if you want a picture of that. Well, really don't, actually. We also have nationalism, the pervasive hyper-nationalism we get that divides workers. Think back to 1914. Workers of the world unite suddenly became workers of the world slaughter each other on the battlefields. And Yates was a teacher, and this is something I want to touch on for a little bit, having been a trained teacher who has yet to find gainful employment in the field. And not only did Yates have to deal with a lot of the problems of universities, the whole tenure system, dealing with the fellow professors who at times could be apathetic and such, but he's really harsh on the public school system about how it instills nationalism, authoritarianism, and it inculcates the dominant values of society, and that's definitely true. As a substitute teacher, I often hear students, using racial epithets and rah rah, the red, white, and brainwash crap we all have to put up with, and the schools are pretty much preparing you for work and not to think. And of course, capitalism is glorified as freedom, and we get the radicals condemned. And Yates had to go through this, and he kind of dropped out of the school system, the university system, and is now traveling the United States. And he gives two reasons: the schools succumb to the market. He was talking largely about universities at this point in the 1980s with the whole Reagan counter-revolution and such, and the fact that students are becoming more interested in partying and jobs at school. It's the whole nature of schools changed. The schools are becoming more run like a business, and those who are entering are just looking for a paycheck. And that, for me, I barely made it through an undergraduate education because at times it just felt I was just being prepared for a wage, and it was so disheartening. And Yates believes that schools have not actually failed in their mission. They've done what they've always supposed to do. They churn out people who will do what they're told and not expect much in return. And they can, people will do mindless work and mindless consumption. And we pretty much see Yates having to not only developing as an intellectual, as a thinker, as an economist and a Marxist. We see, his problems with racism and sexism, not just within himself, but in society in general, and how he tries, not only through as a college educator, but through as a labor educator, to try and give a different perspective, and how ultimately he believes he can't do it in his position. And this is it's a great story. It's a bunch of essays. They're not hard to read. The thing I've always liked about Michael Yates is his understandable language, and the fact that, yeah, he may be an economist, but he actually speaks, something you can read. So, again, a thank you to Michael Yates for the complimentary copy. I highly recommend this book. Please pick it up. And this is Enaa. Until next time.